I try to answer this question about the co-evolution of cities and asking if it can be improved correctly. Because until now, what we see that is that it led to growing inequalities, both in size and in terms of cities all over the world. I will first to remind how this concept, co-evolving city to visit our resistance, was found very early in the 70s, working with the data surgery on the transformations of economic activities within the French cities, analyzed with a very simple method, multivariate analysis, applicable at 3 days with the same cities and the same categories on presence. And the surprise, the discovery was this parallelism of the trajectories of the cities that transformed their internal social urban presence all almost at the same time and in the same direction, with losses of manufacturing employment and working conditions, and gain of many employers in services, banking, insurance, and business services globally. So this first analysis was confirmed by further work by Federbush in the following decades, showing that indeed this process of co-evolution was operating still 20 or 30 years later. And it also was the role for large American contributions, as documented here by Frederick Lewis on the Saying Academy. And this is almost in any country the same type of fluctuation, opposing manufacturing activities to services and developing, boosting activities to old-fashioned and productions. And so the first factor of those multi-diet analyses actually is a trace of the transformations, destructive transformations that were introduced within the system by this epidemic of the first military negotiation. And you see that it is geographically concentrated here because we are in this new world of America around the Great Lakes where transformation is, where authorizing the development of manufacturing activities, money, of the iron, the trees, the coal, and so on. And at that time, the manufacturing development was not happening in the other part of the North American system. But if we look at the second factor of this multivariate analysis, what we found is the trace of the novel process of coevolution for in system developed cities, which is the hierarchical diffusion of innovation. And you can see here that the services that are arriving in cities at a time, it was real estate, finance, and so on, are better developed in all the largest cities. The circles are proportional to the active population, whereas the old-fashioned activity, household services, wood and paper industry, or food production, are relatively concentrated on the smallest towns of all over the system. So, having said that, we developed this kind of analysis in different parts of the world, 7 very large regions, Europe, North America, but also all the BRICS, including Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and documenting about more than 20,000 individual cities that were observed over as long time periods as possible, possibly as many decades that making for which we could find information. And first, observing them synthetically this and frozen with the help of multi-agent labeling. So we have made a series of analysis following the ideas about scenarios. Luis de Pompo is no longer here today, but we have discussed and worked together many times in the beginning of this center. And our theory was that the exponents of the scaling laws indeed reflect the relative age of the indicators, development indicators that you look at in their development as an innovation cycle. And then at the beginning of each cycle, those innovative activities or practices or new ways of doing things are developing in largest metropolises, which has a financial and still capacities for developing that. And later on, they diffuse all over the system. And after a while, when they are mature, they are found relatively concentrated in the smallest town of the system. And what is comforting the theory is that, of course, in developed countries like France or the United States, you find that manufacturing is really a mature activities. In all countries, the new fire activities are actually expressing the relative concentration in larger cities linked to innovative sectors. But in South Africa, manufacturing is still among those leading activities that are boosting the development of cities where they concentrate. And Elsie Sers, who prepared a huge database using the Chinese statistics for enumerating between 8 and 9,000 cities instead of the 200 or 300 prefectures that you find in the current literature. And she also assessed that manufacturing was still like to concentrate in the largest metropolis, as well as research activity, whereas basication, the education sector, of course, was already very common and distributed very well. So our aim when using modeling multi-agent systems was to reconstruct the fast trajectory of individual cities under the hypothesis, a strong hypothesis that they were moving because of their intentions to build up. And it seems necessary before trying to project what the future of cities could be. It's better to ensure if we are able to understand how they did evolve in the past. We are, of course, trying to have produced the first application in geography of multi-agent system in geographical analysis in 1996. At that time, the model was very simple, but it was enough to somehow prove that there was no inheritance of an urban hierarchy if you didn't enable interaction between cities. And you also could derive a strongly hierarchized distribution of city size, even if you start with a rather homogeneous system. But the continuous arrival or innovation was necessary to ensure the structuration of the urban hierarchy. And at that time, remember, the capacity of computers was rather limited, and it was difficult for us to make more than 100 or so simulations with the same model, and we were not very sure that the numerous parameters we need to construct this evolution were at their best optimal value as many of the simulation. So after that, of course, there has been a huge extension of the capacity of computers, and we were able to develop and test a series of simple models on all the countries we have analyzed. including specific model like the Favaro design, which is GMROC, stochastic model of growth augmented by a process of innovation diffusion. The Marius model, which is based on interaction between cities based on the economic profile, and also inflation model between physical transportation networks and the population growth by Jacques Rambaud in 2020. Meanwhile, Clémentine Cotineau and Chaperon invented this with the help of this open mall simulation platform uh, to prepare multimodal, uh, developing one simple model that could be augmented in different versions, including more type of more type of interactions between agents. For instance, here you have a simple GR model, and here you include interactions between cities that enable a better fit compared to observations. And you also may introduce different information from the environment in order to get a better estimation or with the model you use. The method also knows the models of co-evolution include in process of internet transformation of city, which is linked to their adoption of innovation from other cities or to the creation of information inside each of them in an iterative process. And this is made with a genetic algorithm that may augment the description of the economic profile of each city through those processes of mutation or crossover. And the modeling platform also ensures that we can measure the discrepancies here in the y-axis between observations and results of the simulation. And we can see in this simplified CPOP local model, which mimic the emergence of an urban hierarchy with a limited number of parameters to estimate. And here for each parameter, for instance, the probability to create an innovation, we have made more than thousands of different simulations with this parameter varying in his possible domain of variation, but all other parameters exploring the full domain of variations they could find for estimating the optimal solution. And here, there is clearly a minimum value of this parameter, which shows that it had an efficiency in the dynamic of the model, and this value can be estimated as very, very probable for the better estimation of the model. The same with other models. We have this kind of minimum value. But for instance, another parameter like the duration of the effect of an innovation has no incidence on the further dynamic of the model, so it can be eliminated from the description of the model. So it was important for us because in social sciences, it is very rare that we can be sure of what we assess. And so here we can make sure that our hypotheses are both sufficient and necessary. But you see, it is extremely costly to prove that because we had to do half-a-million simulations, which of course was made possible by the new big capacity of computers and this combination of genetic algorithm, and distributed computing on the European competition grids. And this also very efficient hand-motion profile modem that program. So, can we make something for improving on this dynamic of cities, which has led to the huge contrast in city size and ecologies that we observe now? We know, of course, that it is not something pure mechanic. It is the result of, and Tina was just saying, many decisions taken by different stakeholders, which proactively adapt their city to the ongoing changes and according to this description of thematic description of a permanent flow of innovation, which may attract cities in the virtuous circle of peace or let them to decline when there are Roosevelt or Cliff towns. We think that this dynamics actually is always there, even if we can distinguish in the evolution of cities three big periods regarding the effects of such a dynamic. At the beginning, in the first centuries of urban evolution, between after about 3,000 years and after the Neolithic period, we have cities was functioning is no longer limited by the very local resources of the environment as indicated villages, but cities are differentiated because they have governance, they have rising, they have and population processes that enable them to prospect for sources that are much far ahead of them and to connect networks for recreating new resources than those in their environment. But for centuries, they have been limited in their development by local constraints, either from a lack of resources, from natural catastrophes, or predation events coming from other group of people. And it is only in the time of the first industrial revolution where the acceleration of the transportation, the lower prices of transportation as well, and the demographic growth enable the development of urban networks as it was said yesterday, apparently limitless. And nowadays, those network of cities cover all the planet. But of course, we know that those 2 centuries of big urban development are no longer possible under the same constraints of the global resources. The good news is that this network is present for top-down ensuring the circulation of regulation, new rules for taking care of the environment and trying to have smarter development, and also bottom-up for collecting all the innovations that are created in many, even small towns for adapting to the new constraints of the environmental transition. And this, of course, in the context where when you look at the Human Development Index in many different countries, you can see that the situation is better, whatever the level of development of the country, in cities than in the rest of the country. The cities are still a remarkable invention, a sign of our territorial intelligence about how to inherit the talent. Also, we also know that the main driving force of this development is in their urban deliveries, as was noted by the he was employed by the Pope Giovanni Botero in 16th century. Delle cose della pandessa e velozza delle città was a part of his book about agile start, and he uh, theorized uh, how cities were to be managed for a good development. So it was not so much as in his time according to the human and moral qualities of uh, people responsible of the gardens, but he insisted of developing amenities of the city in all directions, in all dimensions. And he did that comparing the development of cities that still had a lot of political power in the north of Italy, for instance, but also in the new colonies in Brazil. So I was very aware of this big uh, driving force of power mandanalis all over the world at the time. Is it correctable? Difficult if we consider how many urban rankings are at stake. You can see in all domain of activity thinking and so on, there are ways to be the first in such and such domain, and cities are very keen to appear in such a kind of ranking. We also have a very large gap in a cognitive dissonance between aspirations of individuals who clearly would prefer to live close to nature and are still attached to some kind of path. And this macro geography of cities that have nothing to do with such individual aspirations, and where competition is very hard, and imitation and homogenization, possible homogenization through globalization, are the rules. So how to intervene in such a system dynamics is so many multi-level feedbacks, which adapted cognitive policies can be introduced. We have to consider those phase dependencies, the adaptive strategies that contribute to fabric this phase dependency. And we also have to know that policies have to target real challenges. For instance, Eurostat developed a database to compare the situation of many new social indicators all over the world. And here they demonstrate that if you look at infant mortality rate, of course, the cities in blue are not bad, but sometimes you find better situations in medium-sized cities in orange color. Whereas if you look at education levels, of course, no problem. The situation is always better in urban areas compared to smaller size of settlements. So this intervention in the dynamics can be made effective if we target the exact value that we want to identify in an urban system. And this collective intelligence is not easy to manage, and as was said yesterday, for the artificial intelligence. And I will share the very cautious conclusion of Alessandro Vescimeni yesterday evening, that making a recommendation for improving the way cities are changing is this domain is something very risky, and has to we cannot be content of designing a digital tool for such and such cities. We have to consider to include larger considerations about the constraints that are guiding this co-evolution between cities. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Denise.